Good morning, everyone, and happy Easter to all of you here and all of you online. I would like to begin with a reading from Discourse from Eternity. Demand that through all tests and trials, the love of God may never fade. O Spirit, I care not if all sufferings come to me, or all things be taken away from me. I pray only that my love for thee never fade through my own negligence. May my love for thee burn brightly forever on the altar of my constant remembrance of thee. So on this day of resurrection, Christ's resurrection, we have knowledge of a soul being able to resurrect into a physical body after death. We have Sri Yukteswar's resurrection. The Giri Mahashaya appeared to many of his disciples when he passed away. The great saints of all materialized their bodies, the avatars, and made themselves known to their disciples in the physical body. And so Christ made himself known to his disciples during the resurrection so many thousands of years ago. And so for us, it may seem like that's too far from me. Okay, that's good for them. They've reached that point. And so we can honor them and we can worship them and we can lay the flowers of our devotion at their feet. And we should. But as far as we're concerned, that's way too far from me. When will that happen for us? How does the resurrection really apply to our own lives? Because this is why the masters come into this world, so that we can transform our own lives. Their love has brought them, divine love has propelled them to come back to help each one of us to achieve that wakeful state where we know that we are one with God. That's why the masters come. That was Christ's mission on earth. That's why he went to Babaji and said, please, please, you've got to awaken my disciples again, because they've lost the gift of inner communion with Divine Mother, with you, with the Lord. They've lost that. And we want to bring that back. And so Christ came back during his time. And he had a miraculous life. He created, and he performed many miracles. And then ultimately he did resurrect after he was crucified. And the story of his life is about the resurrection. It's about how each one of us, every moment, as Master said, is more important than the years. Every moment we can transform our lives. This is what it means. We have the power within us. We have that power. But we have to open up to it. And we have to say yes to life. Many of us, I know I'm included, we look at life and we think, this is great. Everything's going great. I have a great job. I have a great family. I have my children are healthy. The stocks are good. My investments are going well. My health is good. What's so hard about this? And so we come to the temple and we practice our techniques and everything's going well for us, as it should, as it will. Then there's the flip side. We start getting very strong spiritually. And then the karma hits. Then all of a sudden we are met with tests that we look at, people in our lives that bring these tests, the situations, the circumstances that bring these tests, and our first reaction is, I don't deserve this. Where'd this come from? I'm a good person. Why is this happening to me? I'm a spiritual person. What can I do to avoid this? So we start mentally looking around in our minds for ways to avoid these tests. We want to avoid them because they're unpleasant and they're not anything that we want to deal with. But Master said that every single test is a test of our willpower, and that acceptance is the most important quality on the spiritual path for a devotee. Acceptance of the test itself, but also the understanding that we created this karma. Somewhere in the distant past, we can't see. And it comes cloaked in all different varieties and different people and different circumstances that we think are brand new and they just don't have anything to do with us. We have created our own karma. We have created this. And so now we have to work through it. We have to accept it. We don't have to identify with it, but we have to accept it as what? As coming from a loving God who never would have given us these tests until we were ready. God never gives us anything that we're not ready for. And so by just that mere act of mental acceptance and saying yes to life, saying, okay, I can do this. If my health is bad, okay, then I will pray to God for more light in my life, for more healing. I will pray to God to be selfless. If my finances have taken a turn, I will become more generous. If my spouse is making me angry, then I will look to myself and see what are my responses to this? How can I respond in a more positive way so that I can help my spouse? These are the attitudes, and once you get it, once you get the antidote to this karma that's coming to you, seemingly negative, everything turns positive. And you become more of who you really are, which is pure light. Everything becomes positive. And then you will see gradually, little by little, it's a gradual path. It's a gradual path. It takes time and patience. All of a sudden, the people around you are not so adversary anymore. All of a sudden, your finances take a smooth turn. All of a sudden, your health takes a better turn. All of this, we can't put a time limit on it. We can't put a time limit. All we can do is accept that we have created this and that we can transform ourselves to be able to bring light into this situation, thus to the world. And we become instruments for light. We become detached from the problem. We become detached from the karma. It's not who we are, and we begin to see that. And as our spiritual life grows and we become more in love with God and we become selfless and we become more apt to say right, to say yes, to accept everything that comes. Sister Gyanamata said it perfectly. She said, you can't avoid what's coming to you. So why try? You know, there's that wonderful story of, we've told it many times, but it's so inspiring. The devotee who was an alcoholic, and he was very much addicted to alcohol. And Master gave him Kriya Yoga. He got Kriya Yoga. Now, why would Master do that? Don't you have to be perfect before you get Kriya? Don't you have to be perfect before you get onto the spiritual path and be holy, and then you get on the spiritual path? No. You get on the spiritual path because of your yearning for God and for change. That's what brings you onto the spiritual path. That intense yearning for God and that yearning to change yourself, that you're just tired of the way you've been. You want to open up. That's what the spiritual path is about. So he got Kriya, and he was doing Kriya every single day, twice a day, and still drinking. He would drink every single day. And imagine what a grip this addiction had on him, that he couldn't just do Kriya and then walk away from it. No, it took him months, and I don't know exactly how many, but little by little, that Kriya was purifying his heart, so that insecurity which was within him, that needed something outside of himself to make him feel strong inside, started lessening. And that feeling of, I want to avoid this world because it's too harsh. I don't like this world. I hate this world. It started diminishing, that feeling of avoidance and wanting to run. And he started saying yes. And he started accepting his life. Those qualities within him that awaken in us are spiritual souls that that come from Kriya, those are the weapons that we have to get rid of these addictions, to get rid of these attitudes that are keeping us from feeling the presence of God. So gradually, every day, Kriya, finally, he threw away the body, and he never went back to it again. He became free of that addiction, which is very difficult to do. And he became a devotee of Divine Mother. And he just was in joy because he was able to, with the grace of God, and with practicing the techniques, and with that yearning for God, to get rid of this monster that had been taking over his life for so many years. And that's extreme, but we all have things in our life that are keeping us from really experiencing that resurrection of light in our souls. That is there. That light is waiting. All we're having to do is to open up to it. This is what being wakeful means, is to wake up to what's already there. And when you start concentrating on the light, the darkness disappears. And that's what resurrection is. The darkness cannot stay if the light is there. When you go into a dark room and you switch the light on, the darkness is gone. This is what Kriya is. It's the switch. This is what meditation is. It's the switch. It turns on the light. Darkness goes. We have so much help. We have so much support. Swami Kriyananda was such an example to us. And we were fortunate to live with him for so many years. I wanted to listen to a 9-minute clip this morning that he gave a talk on Easter Sunday. I think it was 1979. It's a 9-minute clip, and if everything works as it should, you'll get to listen. So I'm going to turn this on, and we'll see. So I have it all in my own hands this time. We'll see what happens.
The resurrection is any uplifting or beneficial change. It's not merely coming again, materializing a new human body, but we can be resurrected right now. Like that well-known saying, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And a very beautiful saying it is. Somebody bungled it recently, said today be the first day of the rest of your life. What else is it? But we can make it a new beginning if we choose to do so. The consciousness of Easter is that. And if we take it inside ourselves, make a resolution, it can be more important than New Year's. A resolution to resurrect ourselves from delusion. A resolution to change ourselves from now on, to live more in tune with God, to live more in the thought that we belong to Him and not to ourselves. The joy of the resurrection is the real message of this holy season. So much emphasis in the 2,000 years of Christianity has been placed on the crucifixion, the cross, the suffering of the cross. Certainly it's true, and Jesus' words said it, that no man who is unwilling to pick up his cross is worthy of me. So many people think that the spiritual path should be just easy, that, well, you're developing spiritual power, and therefore all doors should open. You should never have any trouble with your body or your mind or anything else. And in fact, in a talk in Encinitas a few months ago, they were talking about tuning into God's will, and Brother Sadhananda said that one way to know when God doesn't want something is when there are obstacles, and when things get difficult, when there are obstacles in the path to what you're trying to accomplish, then you can take that as a sign that God doesn't want it. Well, in that case, He must not want us to find Him. There are a lot of obstacles on that path, aren't there? There's some truth to that, but there's a lot of error too. Nothing worthwhile is accomplished without a great deal of struggle and much suffering also, much opposition. We can't help it. That's just the way that we grow. If a master put it this way, that if a wrestler wants to become strong, he wrestles other strong men. He doesn't wrestle children. And if we want to grow, then we must understand that obstacles and difficulties are necessary, because they help us to develop that kind of strength that ultimately makes it possible for us to claim God consciousness. Some people go into a trance state, medium trance state, and make their minds blank and hope that some great master will speak through them. And sometimes they claim that a master has spoken through them. But the truth is that we have to put out a great deal of effort to rise to that level of energy that they're on before they can really commune with us. They're not going to come down to a level, just as you heard touched on in that reading from the path. Master didn't come down to our level. He would always try to hold up a level that we could aspire to, a level of respect and friendship and so on. And if we didn't meet him on that level, he would just wait until we could. He didn't choose to come down to a level of personal love and personal affection, attachment and emotion and so on. He always held up this ideal for us to attune ourselves to and try to manifest in our lives. And that's true also in our meditation, in our spiritual effort, in our relationship with God and the masters inwardly. That if we don't come up to their level, they're not going to stoop down to our level. They may stoop down a little bit to help us out, of course, they can do that. I mean, you can talk baby talk to a baby for a little while, but your purpose is to bring that child up to the point where he can commune with you intelligently. And this is the way it works also in meditation, that just by becoming a medium and opening the mind and hoping that something will happen, that's not the way it works. We have to raise our level of energy to that point where God works or the masters work, because they are a transformer down from that absolute self, absolute state to a human level, and yet it's on that aspect of humanity that expresses the divine. That's why we need these tests and difficulties and obstacles, because we grow through them. Each time you've got a wave of opposition, if you meet it in the right way, you come up with more strength and more energy, and in the process you become strong. So it's really a good fortune to have tests. It's a good fortune to have trials and to be able to take up your cross and follow Christ. But the lesson of the cross is not the suffering of the cross. It's to bring us to the point where we say, suffering, what suffering? It doesn't mean anything anymore, because we've reached a level where it's no longer able to touch us. The lesson of the cross is the resurrection. And that means the lesson of every test that we go through is the resurrection from that test to a higher level. I've often mentioned that story of Norman, who left Mount Washington because of a struggle with delusion of various kinds. One of them was that he just couldn't stand one of the other monks that he had to work with. This monk was not a pleasant person to be around. I know he used to say to me, I don't know why I hate you, Don, but I hate you. And some people are like that. Actually, he was very good-hearted. He just had this sort of very strong ego. And because of his good heart, Master accepted him. But Norman couldn't stand him and left partly because of him. He came back a year later. He said, you know how I used to hate Jerry? He said, where I work, there are 6 men exactly like him. The thing is that if we run away from our tests, then they only become stronger. Or it isn't really that they become stronger, we become smaller. We become weaker, and therefore they seem to be stronger. We need to accept whatever life dishes out to us. Just accept it. Life goes on anyway. It doesn't matter. We have to live anyway. If we can accept it calmly, then we find that suddenly it turns into a blessing. As Satya Sai Baba says, that sorrow is an interval between 2 joys. And it's true, life always alternates. And if we will take anything that comes calmly and quietly, we will find that it becomes a blessing in the long run. It really is God's grace that touches us in many different ways. So to take it into yourself, to take it calmly, to say that, well, God must want me to learn something. The frustration, of course, comes sometimes in not knowing what he wants you to learn. We would like to have something to show for it, wouldn't we? But if we can't find out what it is, if we just keep loving him, nothing will touch us anyway. Master said, nothing will touch you if you inwardly keep loving God. So keep your mind and your heart in him, and you will see, just as the resurrection came 3 days after the crucifixion, 2 days afterwards, so also if we will keep that faith inwardly, if we will be strong in ourselves, if we will just have faith that God loves us and love him in return, that nothing else really matters, we will see that no matter what we go through, it will turn to be a very great blessing. Sometimes it'll take us in a very different direction. That's why we need to have non-attachment. That's why we need to have the feeling that it's only God's will that we want to do. Because as soon as we have something that we want, then we may find indeed that we suffer and that there's no way out, because what we want may be destroyed. But what God wants for us is for our happiness and for our good. And thus it is that if we keep that attitude, we find that we do grow. The resurrection can be not from death to immortality. The resurrection can be also just from one day to the next, overcoming some difficulty, learning some important lesson, and the greatest lesson of all, the realization that we are always with God, that we never really are far from him, and that if we keep our minds on him, then we will always be free in our hearts, and nothing will be able to touch us.
So true. It's hard to speak after Swamiji. I just wanted to close with a story that Master used to tell, and many of you have heard it, but it's appropriate for today. And it's about this disciple who had a very serious disease. He had diabetes, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said that he had 3 months to live. That's all, just 3 months to live. He was a fairly young man. And so he said to himself, well, if I only have 3 months to live, then I will spend that time seeking God. And so his body was very frail and ill, and he could sit for like 3 minutes at a time in meditation. That's all, 3 minutes at a time. But every day he sat for 3 minutes, and then he would have to get up, and then he would come back. It was very painful for him. And then a few days passed, and he started sitting longer and longer and praying to God, dear God, come into this broken body. Come into this broken body. That's what he prayed for over and over and over and over again. And so 3 weeks passed. He started meditating longer and longer, praying all the time, come into this broken body. 3 months passed, and he was still alive. Come into this broken body. And he prayed and he meditated and he kept seeking God. A year passed. Come into this broken body. He kept getting better, meditating longer. He would meditate long hours every day. 2 years passed. Come into this broken body. And after 3 years, he was praying, and he was praying deeply to God. He was in a very high state of consciousness, and he said, come into this broken body. And there was a flash of light, and from that moment, he experienced cosmic consciousness, he experienced bliss, he experienced God, he experienced that unconditional love, that feeling of oneness, and he was completely healed. He was completely healed of an incurable disease that the doctors had said that he only had 3 months to live. And so he said, Lord, I didn't ask you to heal me. I just said, come into this broken body. And the Lord said to him, where my light resides, no darkness can be. Where my light resides, no darkness can be. And so for all of us, that is the resurrection. Where God's light is, then we are safe. Then we are protected. Then we are supported. Then we are enveloped in his love. We need to love God. And it's not just a platitude. It takes a lot of willpower. It takes courage. It takes takes a lot of yearning in your heart for God. It takes that oneness of purpose, of loving God. And the world will try to pull you away. Just like that man's body tried to pull him away. His health was very severely, he was very severely challenged. He said, no, he ignored it. I'm going for God. And look what happened. This is a true story. Master tells that story. It was one of his disciples. So for all of us, on this happy Easter, we really should be hopeful and have faith that Divine Mother is just waiting for us to open up. That's all. We just need to open our hearts and say yes to what has been given to us in this life with joy, with cheerfulness, and just go with it. It's okay. And environment is stronger than willpower. So not only are you going to open yourself to God in your private meditations, but satsang, the company of devotees around you that are all seeking the same thing is so important to keep your aura strong, to keep your purpose firmly in place, to keep your desire for God strong. It's satsang. So come to the center, call your friends, engage and deepen your friendships with your disciple friends, with your friends that are seeking God, the uplifting people in your life that will help you. Don't stay away, because this is the greatest blessing we can have in this world. Sadhana and satsang, those two things will get you there. And then within that satsang, you begin to serve God with joy. And you see your whole life is transformed. Your whole life. Many years ago, Swamiji visited the Holy Land, and he was he had an experience of Christ that transformed his life. And so Christ came through him, and he wrote these songs of Christ's life. It's called the Oratorio, Christ Lives. So when he came back from the Holy Land, he created and wrote down this music that he had been inspired by Christ to write. And so every Easter we play that oratorio. Every Christmas, it's the life of Christ in music. So I've chosen 3 songs from his beautiful oratorio that we could listen to today, and it's a very transformational music. It's a Western choir. Somebody said to me from India, well, I just don't like that Western music. But when you understand where it came from Christ's vibration to a disciple of Master who is Indian, who is beyond culture. We are all beyond Western, Eastern, woman, man. None of that really matters. But try to tune into the vibration of the music. Try to tune into the joy of Christ's life. The message that he brought was joy. The message that he brought was divine love. So when you hear these songs, open your heart and just listen. And I'll play them now for you. We'll see. God's light is within me and around me. With the sword of faith in my hand. With the love of God in my heart. I'm a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love. And disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. A little more quietly, God's light is within me and around me. With the sword of faith in my hand. With the love of God in my heart. I'm a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love. And disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. Now silently, God's light is within me and around me. With the sword of faith in my hand, with the love of God in my heart, I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere to overcome fear with faith, hatred with love, and disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. Now we'll do a healing prayer for the world. So visualize all those you know who are in need of healing energy in their bodies, their minds, and their souls. See them filled with Christ's love, especially today. Pray that they feel the presence of God in their hearts, and that from this day forth, they love God more deeply, and their lives become beacons of light for this world. Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent, thou art in all thy children. Manifest thy healing presence in all bodies, in all minds, and in all souls. Oh.